Yeah, that's right. Those are whole shrimp. The raw and the cooked. It sounds like a Western, and it sort of is a Western because today I truly am Andrew Scissorhands. We're going to talk all things scissors, and we're going to make an incredible Vietnamese salad, one that I learned how to make 6 years ago, and then 5 years ago, and then 4 years ago, and then 3 years ago, each time that I returned to the lovely country of Vietnam. Sadly, I've not been back since, but the easiest way to get back is to make this salad because there is nothing more joyous than a salad made with rice paper, lots of vegetables and proteins if you like, and to eat it out of the bag. It is the ultimate Vietnamese street food, especially the northern part of the country, and I think you're gonna love it. We're going to get to that in a second. Welcome, everybody, back to Instagram Live, AZ Cooks. Special thanks to our lovely sponsors, the good folks at Schoon, who make these wonderful kitchen shears, my favorite tool in the kitchen. And to the lovely people at Flor de Caña, makers of the world's most sustainable rum. A delicious, delicious rum, especially for cooking. Why do I say that all the time? And by the way, every time we post me making drinks on this show or using wine, some of you people say really nasty things about my sobriety. That is really, really embarrassing for you. I serve alcohol in my house. There's alcohol here. I've been sober 30 years. I have no problem being around booze because I take my medicine. But I don't drink the alcoholic versions of the things that we make. But I use Flor de Caña all the time, and the reason is when I'm making a sauce or cooking with rum, and you use a cheap one, just like you use a cheap wine, red or white or champagne to cook with, when it reduces, it will reveal its impurities as well as its flavor benefits, right? So the higher the quality of the alcoholic product that you use, I can make my own vanilla extract just by using Flor de Caña's oldest rums, and it is fantastic, out of sight, the best stuff. And of course that's what I use, right? So I'm telling you from a culinary standpoint, Flor de Caña is fantastic. All right, on to my favorite kitchen tool. There are 3 different kinds right here, and they represent a whole world of different types of shears that you're gonna have, but they all do the same thing. This small scissor right here is for very tiny, delicate jobs in the kitchen. I cut parchment with it. I cut herbs with it. I do really fine scissor work with that. And you could see that it's ambidextrous, right? Equally good for lefties and righties, right? You can also see, I don't know if you can, let me point this out. There's a small notch with a tiny little blade there. So you could actually put kitchen string through it and pull and cut it, which is super, super handy. It also allows you to put small stems in there and cut it. Think rosemary, which sometimes has a fairly thick wooden stem, and you have to cut that, all right? So that's one. These are 2 different sizes of the same all-purpose kitchen shears. They have a small screwdriver on one side. I also find this extremely handy for breaking ice. Just cluing you in as to how I use these things. The other great thing about it is they come apart, which makes cleanup an absolute breeze. So you can soak them if you're working with candy or chocolate or anything at the hard crack stage of sugar. It is super, super simple to wash them, soak them, do whatever you need with them. And they go into this wonderful, wonderful little slot on my cutting board. My knife block. But I just love this standard kitchen knife from Schoon. They're super sharp. You've seen me, we have videos on our website breaking down an entire roast chicken or roast turkey with one of these. It's one of the great delights to not have to use a knife with really, really hot product when I can hold, wearing a glove or with a small towel, grip a leg, cut it at the joint, break a thigh, cut it at the joint, cut through the top of the crown at the apex of the breast where the keel bone is, and simply take the white meat off of the frame in one big swoop using a scissor, then take my knife and slice it. But I can break down a whole 20-pound stuffed turkey with a scissor faster than most people can using a knife, and it's super, super fun. Scissors are all purpose, and I'm going to show you a bunch of different uses for them, but I think one of the places that I use scissors the most, and let's see, I'll probably do one with the small scissor and one with this one, is when I'm working with shrimp. The first thing is that some people, myself included, because I've taught this for years this way, is to simply grip a bunch of those legs and take the lower 3 sections off in one move. Then I take the next 2 sections and legs off of the shrimp, revealing most of the body of the shrimp, leaving one section within, right? Because we have that nice tail, and then we've got the fans, right? Sometimes what I do is I want to make a completely shellless product, in which case I give a little tug on each fan, honoring Alzina Toops, the doyenne, the queen, the legend of Cajun cooking in Louisiana, who taught me, hey, you young people always talking about sustainability, so why don't you pee-wee that shrimp? Because you want to leave the meat in that fan tail in there. And I hear her voice all the time. But the best way to get that last little piece of meat off is to break the shell with a scissor. Because if I do it with my fingers, they're too clumsy and too thick. And any chance that I have of pee-weeing that shrimp is going to go away. Now, don't blame yourself if what just happened to me happens to you, where the shrimp sticks in there. These shrimp are a little long in the tooth. Doesn't mean they're bad, but you can see by the darkening of the fins there's melanosis that has set in. That's a common, all shrimp have some percentage of melanosis in the shell. But sometimes it makes cleaning them problematic. As you can see, I got some of that little tip out. You can use the shell. Some people don't like to get too messy. And you can use the shell for cutting off, or use a scissor for cutting off all the shell. Or, and this is one of the more common ways to do this, if you try to take a knife, let's say you want to cook these on the shell, but you want to devein them. And many recipes call for that. And the reason they call for that is because you want the shell attached for flavor. Let's say you're going to grill them, and you want the shrimp to maintain more contact with the heat source. But you want to get that vein out. You can see the food in there. It's really the digestive tract. It's not a corporal vein on the shrimp. It's a digestive vein. The best way to do that is to simply cut through, not to use a scissor, not to use a knife. Why do I keep saying that? If you use a knife, you're going to battle the shrimp, and you could slice the vein open, making it tougher to remove. If you use the scissor, you can get right through that very first layer of derma, reveal the vein, remove it. I usually use a towel or a small crab pick for this. Get all of that out of there, and then you have this perfectly deveined shrimp still in the shell. You can marinate them. It'll get in between. Many Chinese, Vietnamese, Thai shrimp recipes call for preparing shrimp like this because the marinade gets in between the shell and the shrimp, and then the shell, especially with certain species of shrimp, then can be cooked to a very high degree of doneness and actually can be eaten as well. So scissors are vitally, vitally important to all kinds of operations with small poultry. I can't prepare quail or pheasant or grouse or rabbit without using a scissor for butchery. I can't imagine preparing shrimp for many recipes without using, I'm going to show you one more time, just place that scissor inside the shell and come all the way down. It's the easiest way to clean a shrimp for a beginner, but look, it reveals that vein right there and allows me to pull it all out, and then I can grab that last little piece, and I don't have to, if you have really delicious fresh shrimp, or you've caught them yourself, you don't need to wash them or rinse them or put any water in the recipe. The shrimp is just done and cleaned with one move. And last thing on that, because people will say, well, Andrew Zimmern, why shouldn't I use a knife? I'll show you why. This knife is really, really sharp. So if I'm going to do this on a board and I want to reverse butterfly these, I have to use a knife with a point. I have to hold my hand flat. I have to insert this in between. Do you see where those two little pieces of joint are on that shrimp? Do you see where it moves, that line there? I have to pierce it right there where it's weakest and very carefully come around to open it up. There are so many places. I have really good knife skills, and I've been doing this for 45 years, okay? That is one of the moves that I am especially cognizant of cutting myself, okay? Because it's tricky. And then you've also pierced the shrimp to a greater depth. Now, I've done this a lot, so I went to one side of the vein. But it's more dangerous, and it's a little slower, and I think there's more room for error to get a clean shrimp that way. I'm going to wash my hands, and we're going to make this salad together. Did someone have questions?
Do you
Yes.
have to clean shrimp?
Yes, you do. And the reason is shrimp are raised two ways. One is in an aquaculture system where they're raised in a pond and nutrients are pumped into that pond, or they're broadcast over. And it's usually finely ground. It's shrimp chow. It's food, right, that the young shrimp, because shrimp only take 32 to 34 days to raise from tiny invisible seedling to this. That's a 30-day-old animal, okay? So in an aquaculture situation, some of those ponds for shrimp are brackish and nasty, and the shrimp aren't that great. So while they won't have real food in their veins, I would insist you remove it and take it out, because I just like to wash shrimp that come from that kind of source. If you buy shrimp that are wild, you have the opposite problem. They actually have food in those veins. That vein, remember, is not a corporal vein, it's a digestive tract, but it's called a vein. So it has little bits of shell and little animals and bits of seaweed and other small flotsam and jetsam that fish eat. And guess what shrimp eat? Things that can't talk today. Things that are bitter sometimes. So you always want to make sure that you clean your shrimp, no matter what. And there's no other way that a shrimp, they have it impossible when they come out with their shrimp, then we'll have a third type of shrimp. There's only two kinds right now. One's raised in a pond and one that grows in the ocean. And I would encourage you to really be persnickety about where you buy your shrimp. From a really good aquaculture source that has a high quality product, or wild. Because there are sustainable wild fisheries for shrimp.
Where do you get your meat and seafood in Minnesota?
Oh my gosh, all the specialty stores. I'm like a French grandma. I go to 4 or 5 places when I'm shopping. I go to the big bulk grocery stores for my big bulk stuff and save money. I go to the premium supermarkets for my generic kind of stuff because they carry brands I like. And then I have butchers that I like, seafood stores that I like, Asian markets that I like, Indian markets that I like, Mexican markets that I like, and I load up on things. So it really is all around. I will tell you one thing that's really cool I was reminded of last night, and this is true in every town. I went to United Noodle, which is our largest Asian grocery store here in the Twin Cities, and they've done such a great job with their meat and seafood. They're carrying Cajun chickens now, Kadjean, which is one of the all-natural chickens that I love the most. They have shrimp with the heads on it. They have live blue crabs. They have everything that you could possibly want. Delicious pork belly, and at half the price that you'll find elsewhere. So I encourage you to support small local markets that have that kind of stuff. Same thing with the meat and fish counter at El Burrito Mercado in St. Paul, which is our largest Mexican market, Latin market. And yes, all the fancy butcher stores and seafood shops, I go there because they can tell me what farm or what boat the beef or the seafood came from.
Do you prefer freshwater shrimp or saltwater shrimp?
There's no such thing as a freshwater shrimp. Anything freshwater is technically a prawn. So, and I prefer shrimp. And I prefer everything from saltwater because it tastes better. Now, at various stages of life, some animals cross over, and of course there are exceptions to the rule. I love really good trout, but it has to come from very cold water where they're feeding on really, really, really healthy ecosystem, right? The bugs and the things around that are trout. And you have to be in a place where you actually keep a trout, right? So be careful about that. I'm a very respectful outdoorsman. I do a lot of hunting and fishing, but you always have to make sure that you're obeying the limits and the slots for whatever region and zone you're in.
What are we making today?
Oh, fantastic. Let's get to that. This is probably the second or third most requested thing in my house. But let me just tell you a quick story while I'm putting some of this stuff in here. We are making a Vietnamese salad in a bag. So I'm at Turtle Lake Park, right, in Hanoi. And Ho Chi Minh City. And we go there at night and there's not a lot of vendors out. It was insanely humid. It was like 90 degrees at 10 o'clock at night and insanely humid. And I decided that I still wanted to eat. So I sat on a bench and I played on my phone for 20 minutes and I read my book for 20 minutes because when I'm traveling, I always have my knapsack with all my shit in it. And all of a sudden, all these vendors came out. It must have been around 11 o'clock at night, and people came out of their houses because the vendors were there. And the biggest line was at this place, because you can smell the people lighting their little charcoal fires and stuff like that and cooking things. And they have like their version of an Odin cart, right, which is the Japanese thing with a lot of soup and all the little dumplings and stuff in little containers. And you could just smell all that. But the biggest line was for this place where all I heard was a lot of banging. And I went up and I saw this being made, and it blew my mind. Spending the last 30 years here in the Midwest, I've seen tons of walking tacos and those kind of things, right? Chili and corn chips in a bag with all the seasonings. But I had never seen a Vietnamese salad. I really can't talk today. A Vietnamese salad in a bag. So what the vendor did was he took 3 or 4 sheets of banh trang. These are what people make summer rolls out of. This is a paste made of rice. And it's pressed in a machine. This is commercially made. There are lots of videos of people who make a puree with the rice and cook down and strain it and puree it and then pour it into a nonstick pan and make their own sheets. It's almost impossible homemade to get one this thin and this beautiful. And kind of like Heinz ketchup, you really need to be a super home cooking nerd to make these from scratch, especially when such high quality ones are available commercially. I've tried it once and never done it again. Whereas I make my own pasta and dumpling skins pretty regularly, right? That to me is way easier than making these from scratch. So if you've ever made summer rolls, some people dip them in water and lay them on a towel and roll their ingredients. I wring out towels, take like 10 tea towels, soak them in cold water, wring them out, and stack these in between. I'm going to put that in the bag. Stack them in between so they stay really moist. They don't get too wet and they maintain a lot of their pliability. These get soft. They turn into a soft, edible thing. They don't stay hard and crispy. And what this vendor did, and he had these pre-cut. I don't. But I cut them in half, and then I'm kind of making noodle threads, and obviously some of the pieces, because they crack, go in there and get smaller, and that's fine. It's actually beneficial, and the reason for that is that it's going to soak up the liquid from the tomatoes and the lime juice and the fish sauce and the lettuce and the herbs that we're going to put in there. And these are going to hydrate, and it's going to become our starch that's in there. So we're really kind of making a Vietnamese pasta salad in a bag, except the noodles in this case are made from those rice paper sheets. Now, people say, why wouldn't you use a mung bean noodle or a rice noodle or some other glass noodle? Well, they require more water to hydrate. Because these are so thin, they hydrate with very little water or very little moisture. So I always put these at the bottom. Set that aside. Next thing we're going to do, some really premium fish sauce, some brown sugar. We're just going to make a really easy, fast nuoc cham. I would encourage people to make this one nice and garlicky. And you don't want to bite down on a big piece of raw garlic. So take your microplane, hold on to the stem end there, and just push some garlic through and into your sauce bowl, right? Super easy. I banged this a little hard I didn't know my own strength. And the garlic just smushed. But you can just pinch it and hold it together. Just throw away that stem end. You don't need much. In a portion or two, all you need is one clove because it's going to diffuse its flavor into there and supply all of the garlic flavor that you need.
Somebody said they miss your shows. Where can they watch you?
Oh my gosh. Well, let's see. We have Instagram Live here every Thursday. You can go onto Peacock and watch What's Eating America. You can go onto Discovery Plus and watch every show I ever made for Travel Channel, Food Network, you name it. So it's like 7 of them. There's hundreds of hours of Andrew Zimmern content there, including my new show, Family Dinner, which is doing extremely well. Thank you to all the fans that have been sending me notes about how much you like binging that show, that it's the feel-good show that is ideal for the time. I happen to agree with you. It's why I enjoyed making it. I travel around the country eating dinner at other people's houses. How much fun is that? That's my job, and I get paid for that. Crazy world. But I absolutely adored it. It's really, really cool. But even all the old episodes of Bizarre Foods and Zimmern List, the Emmy Award-winning Zimmern List, and Driven by Food, all my favorite shows that I've made are on Discovery Plus. And I'm making a 2nd season of Family Dinner right now, and I have a couple other shows that we are in the process of making that I can't talk about. They're going to be out on some other networks. So there's plenty of Andrew Zimmern stuff out there. But yeah, D+. Where's my knife? Let me grab another one here.
I'm asking the questions here.
Oh, Abby, you were so funny. Here's a Thai chili. This is a very, very hot chili. I only need one. Be careful. This has touched my fingers. I have big calluses on my fingers, so it's not going to burn them. But the first thing that I do is rinse them off. And out of habit, only because I've made that mistake before, I make sure if I go to the bathroom that I don't touch anything below my waist. If my eyes itch, I don't touch my eyes. I don't scratch my ear. I don't rub the side of my nose, which is actually the worst. I mean, well, second worst. Make sure you wash your hands after you're working with really, really hot chilies. And I have some really, really nice Fresno chilies here. They're not as hot as that Thai chili.
And what kind of knives are you using right now?
These are Shun, and by the way, a very inexpensive model of Shun. This is the VG Max Damascus Santoku. It's really nice. Pretty. Scalloped. Got some wavy lines on it. It's small, 8 inches. Fits well in my hand. Good size handle. My handle doesn't cramp. So I want 2 different chili flavors in there. I'm just going to continue to stir this. I'll add the other.
Have you been keeping up with the Olympics?
Oh my gosh. So sucked in. I love the Olympics. The stories are amazing. I forget the name of the swimmer the other night, the high school senior from Alaska, and her whole high school piled into the gym in Seward and watched it and fucking erupted. I did not like it last night with poor Caleb Dressler, right? When his family and his wife, it was so beautiful. She's like, I love you, I miss you. And his parents were like, we love you, congratulations. And he couldn't really hear him, and he was so choked up, he didn't know what to say. I felt terrible for, they needed, the director in the truck needs to cut out at that point, right? But yeah, I really do, I dig the Olympics because I think sports is one of the great equalizers. We've all tried. I mean, look, I've taken a couple of laps in a pool, and when I watch what some of those men and women do, it boggles my mind. I thought Katie Ledecky in the relay last night was going to come back. I mean, she gained like 2.5 seconds on the field in the last 100 meters of her swim. Blown away. I could go on forever. I'm also the nerd. I mean, I watch ping pong on like NBC 8. You know, in Spanish if I have to, right? Because I'm just so obsessed about all those minor sports. The only sport in the Olympics that I don't watch is dressage. Sorry. I like the horse jumping. I like hunter jumping competitions. To watch the horse, I know it takes a lot of talent, but I don't like seeing that the queen of dressage win another gold medal for taking a horse at 0 miles an hour through a course. Doesn't do anything for me. I am going to mince some Chinese chives. These are actually garlic chives. And put those in there. I'm going to cut some lettuce into a thin julienne. We have some baby heads of romaine. You can use whatever lettuce you like, but I do like lettuce that has a spine. So you have some crunch and texture, right? These baby romaine heads have a spine. There's a little bit of crunch and texture. Don't put a lot in, just a little. Pop that up on the side.
Where is your apron from?
This is a Headley and Bennett apron. They make a lot of aprons for me. I love this one. Absolutely adore it. How about some bean sprouts? And by the way, we had a list. I did this a year ago as a demo at a food festival, and we had like 70 ingredients on our list, everything from fried tofu to all kinds of things. The key is, I mean, this is sort of a very basic roundup, but you can use whatever you have in your refrigerator, right? Primarily, this is going to be a seafood one because I showed you how to cut the shrimp. These are just poached halves of shrimp. Throw a couple more in there. I like spicy and I like fermented. One of the secret ingredients in a lot of Southeast Asian cookery and Chinese cookery for that matter as well, even Australasia or Pacific Islander cooking, are salted dried fish and shrimp. Now these are very small, very high quality. They're lightly salted and then they're dried in the sun. And I love, if they're a little smaller, I don't pass a knife over them. But sometimes these it's too big a pop of salt and fermented flavor. It's not as strong as fish sauce, but if you put a little handful in there, you are putting a monstrous oomph of flavor in the form of umami into this salad. If you have smaller ones, you can toast them and put them in a mortar and pestle with some salt and peanuts. First thing I do with a mortar and pestle is break the peanuts up so they don't go everywhere, and then use a circular motion. If you see some flying out, it means either your mortar and pestle is too small or you need to break up those bigger pieces.
If somebody doesn't like shrimp, what would you recommend putting in?
Roast pork, roast chicken, no animal protein at all. Just use some fried tofu, let's say. There's lots of different things to do. This is the ultimate way to get rid of all kinds of leftovers in a no-cook meal. I'm putting in a few tablespoons of peanuts, If you don't like peanuts and want to use cashews or almonds, go right ahead. Toasted rice powder. We've talked about this before. The key to so many Thai and Vietnamese dishes is that piquant roasted flavor that toasted rice powder gives. You can take an Asian long or short grain rice, put it in a 300-degree oven in a pie tin, single layer. 10, 15 minutes later, it turns a nice mellow brown. Pull it out, put it in your spice grinder, pulse it, and you'll have enough toasted rice powder to last you for months. I love fried shallots. So here we have some fried shallots. I'm just going to throw those in there. Gives it that sweet, crunchy flavor.
If you could add an Olympic sport, what would it be?
Cooking. How about?
Not disc golf?
Yes. I mean, I was about to say, disc golf could replace dressage. I'm going to get so many nasty letters from all the dressage people. Here, let me ask you a question. I mean, because look, I'm a New York City street kid from a long time ago. So when I see skateboarding in the Olympics, I'm one of those guys, and believe me, I'm old enough to be your grandpa, okay? And I am so pro skateboarding. The only thing that they should do with skateboarding is when they're done with their tricks, they should quickly tag a piece of a wall, right? And make it complete the cycle, right? Because if you can't do it all, don't be in the Olympics, right? So I love seeing that stuff. You know, I loved snowboarding coming into the Winter Olympics. And when, by the way, when snowboarding was going to be in the Winter Olympics, people freaked the fuck out. They freaked out. Oh, and now, Olympics, the biggest Winter Olympic hero is Shaun White. Right? I mean, it's an incredible way the worm turns. I love seeing the mountain biking is insane in the Olympics. I think that is just absolutely fantastic. These are great sports. But yes, I mean, we talk a lot about disc golf and, you know, certainly have recently on my IG and whatnot. But the fact of the matter is that disc golfers are, you know, incredible athletes who deserve their share of the spotlight too. So we're going to put those sports in there, and I can guarantee you, what are we now? The next one is 2024 in Paris. I don't know whether it's going to go down in Paris, but by 2028 it will be in the Olympics. Mark my words. All right, tomato. How do you cut a tomato properly? For something like this, I quarter it. It's my first move. I then take my knife and I just rest it and I push down here, and look what happens. That seed pod comes right out. I'll show you again. I pinch the top. This comes up. I then put my knife here and I just wiggle. Oh, look what happens. It even separated that seed, and I just drag my knife across it. So what do I do with these? Well, I think you kind of eat with your eyes. Keep bisecting it. Bisect each piece twice. So each quarter of a tomato becomes 4 slices, and you have points then at both ends. So it's visually appealing. And remember, tomato is prized for its flavor, but when you break it down, it provides acidity and sweetness to a dish, as well as nice texture. So we're going to put 3/4 of a tomato in there. Then,
if you were cooking this for people, would you serve this alone, or would you have something else to serve it with?
well, I would probably do something like prepare 4 of these and let them sort of sit like this without the rice sheets in there. Prepare 4 bags, just keep them at room temperature. People are having drinks, blah, 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 blah. And then I put the rice sheets in them, the nuoc cham in there, pour it in, toss, 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 and while everyone is eating, probably serve, you know, satay or some other dish with it at my house. But I make this for lunch in the summertime twice a week at my house. Because I mean, I have all these ingredients lying around, little bits of things, and you just throw them in there. Now, the vendors have huge bushels of herbs, huge. And they're in these 5-gallon buckets. And they have a 5-gallon bucket each of cilantro, mint, and Thai basil. So they are not picking individual leaves off of it. They take scissors and just cut pieces of the leaves in there, which, by the way, is super fun. Many of us have been saying for years and years, the stems of cilantro are as delicious as the leaves. In fact, in some dishes, I just use the stems. And then mint, the same thing. Just go at an angle and take off pieces of those leaves, right? Leave the big stems behind. If you are not free and easy in your life and you need to OCD the crap out of it and put things in little bowls, believe me, I get it because I do that too with a lot of stuff. But with this salad, it's more about easy and freewheeling. Now, my brown sugar during the time we've been talking and stirring a couple times has dissolved, and we have a beautiful nuoc cham. This nuoc cham is perfect for dipping little fried foods in or little cutlets and things like that. But it's strong. If you like it that way, by all means dump it in there. Just don't use a lot of it. If you, like me, traditionally use simple syrup to make it, then your nuoc cham already has water in it. So why do I want to dilute this with water? Well, because the strong flavor that I had before is knocked back by a factor of about 15-20%. It's perfect, flavor-wise. It's not going to overwhelm anything. And it's the right balance for using as a dressing. A vinaigrette is very strong, but let's say vinegar and Dijon mustard tasted twice as strong as they currently do. You'd want to dilute it with something before you used it. Make sense? Fish sauce, lime juice, brown sugar, garlic are extremely big flavors. So knocking it back with a tablespoon of cold water, and by the way, 90% of the recipes for nuoc cham include cold water, either to make a simple syrup with the sugar first, or just to loosen it to get it to the point of satiety. So I've got all of my ingredients in this bag, and all I'm going to do is add some of the nuoc cham. And then I'm going to shake it so that that nuoc cham gets attached to every single piece of every side of every ingredient in there. So they do this for you in Turtle Park. And then the guy turns to you and hands you the bag. Now, by the way, it's not a Ziploc bag. It's a pile of plastic bags. You know the way when you go to the supermarket, you get those little paper-thin bags? So he tears them away, and he shakes them and holds them up. He parks his cart under a streetlight so he can see if there are any little holes in there so that nothing drips on you. But don't be the way I was the first time I got the salad. He handed it to me, gave me a pair of chopsticks. I rip the thing open, and I go right in there to start eat it, and guess what happened? Wasn't ready. Salad wasn't ready because these little sheets of bantrang, do you see how they're starting to soften? Do you see how it's got that shiny stuff on it? That's the juices from everything, right? But it's not quite ready to be eaten. Now, what's happening in the bag? Because they always say wait a couple minutes before you eat it. What's happening in the bag right now? Is the liquid that we put in there, because this is the most fascinating part to me, enough to make the bantrang softened? Yes and no. There's so much acidity in the bantrang. The fish sauce, the brown sugar, the lime juice are all different forms of acid, right? Once we put that in there, it starts to pull the moisture out of the tomatoes, out of the sprouts, out of the herbs, right? The lettuce, the garlic chives, the hot pepper, all have liquid in them. The scallion, all has liquid in them. So all that you're doing is letting this soften, not only so the nuoc cham makes those little sheets moist, but the juices from the tomato and the lettuce and all of that stuff makes it that way. So now you open this up. And you start to march down the street. I'm in charge of this show, Abby.
That's fair.
By the way, I should just say Abby is our new digital associate here, and Emily is our intern for the summer. And I want to package them and take them with me wherever I go, kind of like a Greek chorus, because they're both really hysterical and make me smile. Today, I walked in, I said to Abby, "How you doing?" And she says, "Great, I just got an asparagus tattoo." Don't you want people like that working with you? So after an extra 30 seconds, the banh trang is soft enough. And it's absorbed all of the wonderful juices from everything and the sauce. And you can see that the banh trang, those rice paper sheets, can't talk today, too much traveling, have softened enough so they're perfectly edible. If you love cold, easy, weeknight salads, if you love spicy food, if you like Vietnamese food or any of the food of, maybe you've never tried Vietnamese food before, but you love Thai food, this is the salad for you. But you gotta like spicy food, otherwise just delete the chilies. Because this is appropriately Vietnamese hot. And shows you lots of different ways to use my favorite ingredient in the kitchen, which are my scissors. You're only as good as the quality of your ingredients. Your ingredients include your equipment. Every chef should have one good sharp knife and a way to keep it sharp, right? A steel. And the second purchase should be a pair of kitchen shears for whatever your biggest tools are. I would always get this first, but I use both. I even have a specialty pair of shears that only removes the tops of quail eggs. That's super nerdy, but that's how I roll. If you don't have a pair of kitchen shears, get a pair of kitchen shears. It's going to make your life really, really, really simple. You were saying, Abby, you have another question?
What is an underrated protein that more people should cook with? Like meat or fish?
Well, the most popular meat in the world outside the United States is goat. Inside the United States, goat is like 19th. That's criminal. Meat goats are fantastic. We have tons of dairy goats in America. We need to be working more with meat goats. I also think, and everyone's going to be horrified at this, donkey is one of the most delicious meats in the world. And at some point, we need to start caring about what kind of animals we're raising for human consumption. Now, I do think we need to eat less animal protein, but I also think we need to diversify the ones that we have, and it takes so long to grow certain animals to maturity, and they use up so many resources. Goats, donkeys, little fish with heads on them, things like that are certain species are really quick to raise to maturity for eating. They're delicious. Rabbit is another one. Rabbit's delicious. Healthy, lean protein, one of my favorites.
Have you ever cooked with finger limes?
Of course I have. Finger limes are a wonderful ingredient. You cut them open. It's a small little oval fruit. It has tiny little, crunchy little seedlets that are like Pop Rocks, and they have lime flavor in them. And they're great to garnish salads. Right now, it's just that they're expensive and unnecessary. So when, I get a container of mixed product from an online vegetable purveyor and they throw in a box of finger limes, I don't say no, and I'm really grateful, but I don't seek it out to buy it.
Have you tried squirrel?
Many times. I have frozen squirrels in my freezer right now. And chicken fried, if you have not made chicken fried squirrel in cream gravy, you are really missing something. Squirrel is absolutely delicious. And if I cooked that dish and served it to you, and you didn't know what it was, you would ask for seconds every time.
What's your favorite guilty pleasure TV show?
My favorite guilty pleasure TV show? True confession, when I am on the road, I will get my laptop open and I will watch 8 episodes of Antiques Roadshow back to back to back to back to back. Hands down. Then I switch channels and I watch 1970s game shows. Like, Gene Rayburn in the original Match Game, right? The original $20,000 or $10,000, maybe it was $1,000 pyramid when it started. But yeah, that kind of retro stuff from early on in my life.
What's a good way to use pickled red onions?
Pickled red onions, tacos. Anything that's fatty that you want to cut the richness of. Delicious on salads. Last question. What do we got? Make it a good one.
Okay, Andrew, if you could go to dinner anywhere tonight, where would you go?
Dinner anywhere tonight? Where would I go? I would like my dad to be alive and go to his house. To whatever he wanted to make. I loved having dinner at my dad's house. And I've been thinking about him a lot recently. Second, do I have a second choice?
Sure, yeah.
Someone posted something, I think my friend Ken Oringer posted something the other day about Bistro Paul Bert, one of my favorite restaurants in Paris. It just got me thinking about, in every city there's one restaurant that I have to go to, right? And I haven't traveled internationally in almost 2 years. Because I was doing a domestic show right before COVID, and then COVID hit and all the rest of that. And my schedule hasn't allowed for me to hop overseas, and I miss some of my haunts overseas. And I have friends who, for the first time in 18 months, went overseas this summer and are sending me photos and stuff and asking me, oh my God, I'm on this island off the coast of Turkey, where do I eat? Or I have a lot of friends who went to Croatia this year, and they're like, oh my gosh, where do I eat? And I miss it. Somebody sent me a picture today of Cafe Spizza in Split, Croatia, one of my favorite places in the world to eat. This is a restaurant, by the way, where when you walk in this time of year, you'll love this, Abby. There's 100 pails with wild asparagus in it. And I said to the chef and owner, I said, what's with all the pails of asparagus? She goes, well, our country is civilized, unlike yours. So rather than buy asparagus in the market, I tell the employees, I pay everyone X number of dollars for every 5-pound bucket of asparagus that they can collect on the way into the restaurant. So people walk several miles from their home to work, and they bring buckets, and by the time they get to the restaurant, they've got buckets and buckets of asparagus. She puts it all over, and then that's what she serves 5 different ways in the restaurant that night, right? In America, if even a chef that lives on an island off the coast of Maine can't throw a line in the water and then put that fish on a plate and sell it, it's not legal. Makes no sense to me. I know why the law is there. Don't at me. I get it. But it really is important that we start to think a little bit more logically around food. It's wonderful to eat at restaurants where the whole staff is quote unquote foraging for the dinner that night. It makes for some really tasty food, and a chef that runs a restaurant like someone would run a family where everyone has a voice at the table, I think is the future of our industry in a very healthy way. And I think the future of how we need to be conducting ourselves in any business anywhere on this planet. Our resources are precious, and we've been abusing our greatest resource of all time, which is other people, right? Other people are more important, right? It's not what we do, it's who we do it with. We hear that kind of stuff all the time and we nod like, yeah, that's right, but then we don't really put those principles into practice. It's really, really hard. I got to pay rent and keep the lights on, but I love the people that I work with, and I try, not great at it, but I try to put them all first. So yeah, that's the end of the speech. Thank you to the good folks at Shun and Flor de Caña. Make this recipe. Get yourself some kitchen shears. My apologies to several people who I spoke to today said, you're going to talk about music finally, so let's do that next Thursday. We're going to make sure that we talk about music. Everyone should make this, everyone, super easy. Let's say you're a mom in Texas, make a handful of these and throw them at the kids. Let them use their hands. It's going to be great. Love my Texas moms. What else do we have to say? Be kind to each other. Everybody have a great week. See you next Thursday. Thank you.